Hello and welcome to the Tech Blackboard. This is episode 3 of our DP-900 series. Starting this episode, we are going to have a deep dive in our real exam questions for DP-900. But before that, I would like to mention that friends, while these questions will surely help you clear the certification, however, if you really are serious about the cloud career, you must take the Microsoft course for each certification that you attempt. As for me, before attempting any certification, I always complete the Microsoft Learn course. Let me quickly show you how. So this is the site for DP900. This is Microsoft Learn site, and as you scroll down, you will see all the modules that are defined by Microsoft, which you will find handy in order to prepare for this examination. As you might notice, I have completed each of the module before I have attempted this DP900. All these modules have not only helped me in clearing the certification, but have also given me a very sound understanding of the concepts. If you are liking my work, please like and subscribe to my channel. If you have already done, thank you for that. Please do share this video and also share your comments, questions and suggestions in the comment section below. Now I am also coming up with Azure Fundamental series, and this is the first part in that series. Make sure to watch this video as well. Now let's jump into the questions. As I mentioned in our last episode, there are multiple formats of questions. We are starting with the drop-down sort of questions. Our first question is, descriptive analytics tells you, and then you have to choose from all these four options given here in the drop-down menu. The first one says, what is most likely to occur in future? The second one, what occurred in the past? Third one is, which actions you can perform to affect outcomes? And the fourth one is, why something occurred in past. Before attempting this question, let's understand what are the different types of analytics. There are four analytics, namely descriptive, second one is diagnostic, third one is predictive, and the fourth one is prescriptive. The descriptive means what is happening. So whatever is happening, that is given or judged by the descriptive analytics. The second one, diagnostic, that tells you why it is happening. The third one is predictive, which is very understandable. It tells you what will happen. So we are making a prediction. Then comes the fourth one, which is prescriptive. Prescriptive means what action should we take. So you can remember it prescriptive as, if you have gone to a doctor, they normally gives you a prescription. So they tell you what do you need to take or which medicine do you need to take. So prescriptive means what action should we take. Now look at the options given in the drop-down menu. The first one says, what is most likely to occur in future? This surely is predictive. So in predictive analytics, we predict about the future. So this is not our answer. Coming to the third one first, which actions you can perform to affect the outcomes? So this one is prescriptive, right? The fourth one is why something occurred in past. So as I told you, why it is happening, this comes under diagnostic analytics. Then we are left with the second option, which says what occurred in past, and that's exactly our answer. Now let's come to our second question. Our second question talks about ETL process. It says an extract, transform and load process requires. So we have to tell what should be selected in order to fulfill this sentence. Let's start by looking at the options. A matching schema in the data source and the data target. Well, both the schema in data source and data target need not to be same, because of course when you load the data, transform the data, the schemas can be different. So this doesn't seem to be the right answer. Then the second option is a target data store powerful enough to transform the data? To me, this looks a correct option. Why this is a correct answer? Because you are transforming the data into the target schema. Thus, the target data should be powerful enough to transform the data. However, let's look at the other options as well. The third option says data that is fully processed before being loaded into the target data store. This might not be fully true because you can, of course, process the data after it's being loaded into the target data store. Then the fourth option says that the data target to be a relational database. This again is not true because the target data can be of different type of data. It can be relational, it can be non-relational depending upon what you are loading. So our correct answer is the second one, a target data store powerful enough to transform the data. Now let's look at the third question. The third question says, in the batch processing, the options given are data is always inserted one row at a time, data is processed in real time, latency is expected, and processing can only execute serially. There are two types of processing. The first one is batch processing. The second one is real-time processing. The batch processing actually processes the data into chunks, and the real-time processing processes the data as and when it comes. So if you see very carefully, data is always inserted one row at a time, does not belongs to batch processing because it processes the data in bulk. Data is processed real time. This is not batch processing, but this is real time processing. Latency is expected. Yes, this one looks to be true because when you are processing data in batch, latency is for sure expected. The fourth one is processing can be done only execute serially. This is not true because it can also exist or done parallelly. So the correct option is latency is expected. Let's move to our fourth question. It says transcribing audio files is an example of dash analytics. As I told before in the first question, descriptive means what's happening. Predictive means that we are analyzing what will happen. So we are making a prediction. Then prescriptive means what action should we take. Now, if you look at the transcribing audio files, it has nothing to do with descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. So the obvious answer is cognitive. Now let's look at the fifth question. The fifth question says a relational database is appropriate for scenarios that involve a high volume of. We have to pick one out of these four options given. The first option is changes to a relationship between entities. Second one is geographically distributed rights. Third one is transactional rights. And the fourth one is rights that have varying data structures. Now, if you look at this question very carefully, you will see the keyword is relational database. Looking at the properties of relational database, changes to relationship between entities. This is not the right option because when it's a relational database, you don't want to change relationship between your entities very frequently. The second option says geographically distributed rights. We all know how difficult it can be to distribute a relational database geographically. So definitely this is not the right answer. The third option, transactional right. This seems to be a correct option because relational databases are very suited for OLTP type of transaction. The fourth option is rights that have varying data structure. Definitely not a property of a relational database because when it's varying data structures, then it's more suitable for non-relational database. So our correct answer is transactional rights. Now look at the next question. The next question says, a visualization that shows a university's current student enrollment versus the maximum capacity is an example of cognitive, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. Which one of these analytics is an example of this one? As I told you before as well, all these are categorized. Descriptive is what? Predictive is what will happen in future. Prescriptive is what action you need to take. And cognitive means taking more intelligent decisions. Here, what you are actually doing is you are comparing the current student enrollment versus the maximum capacity. So this is more an example of descriptive analytics. Because here you are making a comparison between what has already happened, which is the current student enrollment. So you are comparing it with what is the maximum capacity. So the things have already happened in past and you are just comparing them. So that's why the correct answer is descriptive analytics. Let's move on. Now let's look at the seventh question. It says a relational database must be used when a dynamic schema is required. Data will be stored as key value pairs, storing large amount of images and videos. The fourth option is strong consistency guarantees are required. Of course, again, this is relational database. This is very important and you have to keep these keywords in mind whenever you are answering any question. A relational database does not support dynamic schema. This is an attribute for non-relational databases. Data is stored in key value pairs, definitely not an attribute of relational database. Storing large images and videos. This, of course, is not a relational database. Relational database are more suitable for storing values in terms of a tabular format, and definitely not large images or video files. Storing large video files or image files is more suitable for database like blob storages. Then coming to the last option, strong consistency required. This definitely is our right answer. The reason being that when it comes to relational database, we are always almost talking about OLTP type of transaction, which comes under strong consistency. Now let's look at the eighth question. The eighth question asks you to choose a database that natively supports the analysis of relationship between entities. The first option given is column family database. Now, column family databases are groups of related data that is accessed together. One example of column family database is Cassandra. Now, column family database does not support relationship between entities. The document database, as the name suggests, are the database that mostly stored information in form of documents. Then we have graph database. Graph database are very suitable to do the analysis, or they support the analysis of relationship between entities. So it's a graphical representation where you can very easily depict or support the analysis of relationships. So this looks the right answer. However, let's look at the last option as well. Key value store. Now key value store very specifically are used when you have to store the data in form of a key and a value. So you have a key and then you give a value for it. The most known database for this key value pair that comes to my mind is MongoDB. So the correct answer for the eighth question is graph databases. Now look at question number 9. In this question, you are given a JSON file and some questions based on it. If you have already worked with JSON file, this should not be a very hard question for you. Look at the JSON file very carefully. We have details of a customer, its first name, last name, address, social media, and phone numbers. Now let's examine the questions. The question asks what kind of node customer is. Is it a nested array? Is it a nested object? Or it's a root object? If you look at the JSON, you can very easily find the customer is a root object, or you can also say the parent object, because all the other attributes or nodes are under it. You can find these curly braces, they are opening and closing down at the bottom. So customer is a root object. And that's what our right answer is. Now the question asks, what is an address? You can see address is here. And then it says, is it a nested array? Is it a nested object? Or is it a root object? Of course, it cannot be a root object because root object we have already seen is a customer. So is it a nested array or is it a nested object? Now, if you want to know what is an array or you need to be sure what is an array in this or any kind of JSON, an array is always marked by these square brackets. So you see the social media has these square brackets. However, the address has a curly braces. So address is definitely not a nested array. So then we are left with a nested object. And that's of course is the right answer. Coming to the social media, I already told you that a node which has square brackets opening and closing, that always is a nested array. So that's a correct answer. Now that we have done a lot of drop down questions, let's pick some other style of questions. Let's pick yes no questions. In these kind of questions, you will be given a single or a multiple statement and you have to pick yes or no. Let's see our question number 10. Our question number 10 gives us three statements. The first statement says normalization involves eliminating relationships between database tables. Does normalization involve eliminating relationship? No. In fact, it's the quite opposite. Normalization is all about building relationship. So this statement is a no. Now let's look at the next statement. It says normalizing a database reduces data redundancy. Yes, this is a correct statement. In fact, this is the main purpose of normalization, to reduce the data redundancy. The third statement says normalization improves data integrity. Of course, this is the main focus area of normalization. The sole purpose of normalization is to reduce data redundancy and to improve data integrity. Now let's move to the question number 11. In question number 11, we are given three statements. Batch processing can output data to a file store. Batch processing can output data to a relational database, or batch processing can output data to a non-SQL database. If you have read thoroughly about batch processing in Microsoft Learn, you will know that all these statements are yes. So all these statements are true. Moving on to our question number 12. The question number 12 is related to Microsoft or common Azure concept called PaaS, that is Platform as a Service, IaaS, that is Infrastructure as a Service. So the first statement says Platform as a Service database offering in Azure requires less setup and configuration effort than Infrastructure as a Service. This is a true statement because when it comes to infrastructure as a service, in this one, you have to spin your virtual machines, you have to do basic configurations on the virtual machines, and on top of those, you put your database. However, when it comes to PaaS services, you just need to spin up your database services. So PaaS as comparison to IaaS requires a lot less setup and configuration effort. The second statement says as PaaS database offering in Azure provide administrator with the ability to control and update operating system version. This is also a true statement. Then the third statement says all relational and non-relational PaaS database offering in Azure can be paused to reduce cost. This is not true. Why? Because unlike IaaS or infrastructure as a service, you cannot stop PaaS services. Now here is a picture from Microsoft site. This shows you what all components are included in IaaS, PaaS or SaaS services. Here you can see that operating system comes under the bracket of PaaS services, and that's the support for our answer for the statement number 2. So PaaS does give a control to update and control the operating system version. This concludes our first part of DP-900 questions. In the next part, we will take more such interesting questions. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share your valuable comments. Until we meet again in our next video, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.